Today on the Roundhouse, we are talking to some of the women of the freight railroad industry. All aboard!
In days past, the roundhouse was where the railroad worker united with the steam locomotive, each to prepare for the journey ahead. Today, it's where we examine the history, the industry, the machines, the hobby, and the passion behind railroading. News, interviews, stories, and more. So climb aboard. This is The Roundhouse.
Welcome to the Roundhouse. I'm your host, Nick Ozarek, and this is episode number 145 of our Trains and Railroading podcast, where we're talking about everything in the industry and the hobby. You name it, and we discuss it. The Roundhouse podcast is a production of Streamliner Media, here to address your digital marketing and video production needs and specializing in the freight and tourist railroad industries. If that seems like something that benefit your company, go to streamlinermedia.com. Today, we are talking to three women who work in different parts of the freight railroad industry about their career trajectories, how they got to where they are, the type of work that they're involved with, understanding more about the field and how it is becoming a more inclusive environment. Before we get to that, though, I want to thank those of you who are supporting The Roundhouse on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/The Roundhouse for as little as $1 a month, you're going to be supporting the work that we do here on the show. Folks like Sam, Ulrich, and John, who have just signed up. Thank you guys very much. And I want to thank the Mechanical Services Department of the Strasburg Railroad for sponsoring this episode. Learn more at mechanical.strasburgrailroad.com. Our first guest today is the president of the Arkansas and Missouri Railroad. Please welcome Caren Kraska.
Hello, everyone.
Our second guest is the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Cathcart Rail, Vanessa Knapton.
Hello.
And our third guest, Senior Vice President of Law and General Counsel for the American Short Line and Regional Railroad Association, Sarah Yurasko.
Hi, happy to be here.
Great to have each of you. Let's start off with understanding how you got to where you are. So, Caren, provide us an overview of your career path.
My trajectory towards railroading really started when I was in college. I was a math science type person, so I decided to pursue civil engineering with a degree in transportation. I did not anticipate that I was going to go work in the railroad industry, and in my first job, I did not. However, a couple of years after that, I decided that I was going to join Conrail in an internal consulting position. As you may know, Conrail was an exciting place, and things were getting done for the various reasons that they needed to make great progress in a short amount of time. So during my tenure there, the decisions you made and the actions you took were visible, and you got not quite immediate feedback, but you knew that there was an impact that you would see the results of sooner or later. So there was great opportunity, and so I ended up working in the mechanical department, marketing, sales, industrial development, and then exposure to other operations, transportation and operations, not so much, say, finance, but it was a great background. Many years later, my family had the opportunity to invest in a short line in Arkansas, and the company had a management team in place. So it was managed from afar. Due to personal circumstances, in 2017, I moved down here to Northwest Arkansas and became involved in the day-to-day operation of the company. And I'm continuing in that role today.
Excellent. How about you, Vanessa?
Well, mine is a little bit different. I went to college on the East Coast and ended up in Los Angeles, and for some reason got a job at the railroad working as a switchman brakeman. So I worked on the ground for 4 years, had my first two children while I was actually working on the ground. And then I was asked by a supervisor to take a leadership position, and I became a train master for 10 years. And I was luckily working in the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles right at the beginning of the first international intermodal boom. So it was really an exciting time to be a part of. At that time, I had started out at the Santa Fe, which was then bought by the BNSF. And so I'm an employee of the BNSF, worked for them, total of 14 years. Got my MBA, and then parted ways with that company for thinking I was getting out of the industry. Worked for a shipper for a couple of years, and then started in sales on the car repair side. So I've been doing the car repair sales business for about 12 years. Total time in the industry is about 30, sadly.
Sadly, no, impressively. How about you, Sarah?
So for me, in law school, I was focused very much on international law. I also have a master's in international affairs. But then, what do you know? My second summer, I had an internship at the Department of Transportation, and I fell in love with transportation. I started my career at the Federal Railroad Administration right out of law school almost 19 years ago. I was the expert attorney in track safety standards, among other areas, in the Rail Safety Division. And then from there, I went over to Amtrak, and I worked in the high-speed rail department and then the Northeast Corridor Infrastructure and Investment Development Division. I then went to the Association of American Railroads as Assistant General Counsel for a little over 7 years before coming over to the American Short Line and Regional Railroad Association, where I've been for a little over 4 years as SVP Law and General Counsel. So I've had a lot of great opportunities. I've been able to see the industry from government, passenger rail, Class 1, and short line perspective. I'm also president of the League of Railroad Women, which is a professional organization cultivating and connecting women in rail. And I've been involved in the leadership of LRW for about 7 years now.
Starting with you, Vanessa, in what ways has the freight railroad industry grown in terms of the amount of variety of career opportunities that exist either directly with railroad companies or with companies that support freight railroading?
Yeah, I think that's the key. There's a lot of growth on the contracting side with the class ones and now the short lines. So you've got suppliers who provide either parts and equipment or labor for all kinds of areas, from track maintenance, signal, um, various types of equipment. You've got sales support and then technology suppliers. My company, for example, we work in the car repair space, and we have grown from, just a few employees in one location in the last 8 years to now over 900 employees with 100 locations. And we work across the whole country, the United States, for short lines.
What have you seen, Sarah?
So I would agree with Vanessa that the short line segment of the industry is very much well poised for growth. The short line started to experience tremendous growth, of course, following the economic deregulation of the industry after the Staggers Act was passed back in 1980. And short lines today creatively address the needs of their shippers, flexing their schedules, capabilities to help their customers take advantage of market opportunities. And we're finding more and more that rail is more top of mind with shippers as it's being used to address a company's environmental goals, because rail is environmentally friendly, leading to new opportunities for short lines. And I'll also add that technology is changing the types of jobs associated with railroads. We have so many more cybersecurity requirements that we have to comply with today. There's also considerations of alternative fuels and locomotive types. Those will necessitate, newly and different trained employees. We have automation coming more online now, more railroads using things such as drones. It's really an exciting time for railroads and the companies that supply them.
And what are you seeing from your perspective, Caren?
So I'm seeing the same thing. Short lines have more opportunities to be creative and to develop innovative solutions to serve the needs of the customers as well as the local communities. We can tailor our service to meet the needs of the customers. We run special trains. We transload commodities as needed. I have even run an engine with a single car to prevent a shutdown. You're not going to see bigger railroads doing that. Looking at it from a different perspective, there are compelling reasons to expand our use of contractors or engage other companies to provide services. Some of it may be due to the inability for us to hire the proper workers, and you may see that in, say, maintenance of way, or it may be the function of you don't have the equipment to do the job. But there are other areas where you don't necessarily have the ability to make the expenditures, or it's not worth it to do those. And that is, say, in the technology realm, software, you compliance, track inspection, monitoring car movements, training. These are just a few of the opportunities that the railroads have to outsource. And this is a growing area, and I would have no way of predicting where we are today, looking back over the past 10 years. But this is going to be a time of important changes in regulations and opportunities. And one of the other areas that we haven't addressed is the fact that holding companies are requiring independent short lines. And that will have an impact, and I'm not sure we've seen all of it yet, but that is also out there.
It certainly is a changing landscape of things and does provide a mixture of blessings. Something that Chris Eden Green asks is, what do you believe are the strongest stigmas that exist right now in terms of getting women into the industry? That's something that obviously we care about because we want more people to be getting into this industry. So what are the things that are being worked to overcome, or that we're seeing successfully overcome? Sarah, we'll start with you on this.
Yes, and I'm glad I can answer the question better from the perspective of what are some of the biggest challenges for women as they try to enter the industry. So LRW has surveyed women in the industry several times. And we have found that the greatest needs for women in our industry include, we want more opportunities for education, for networking, for mentorship. I'll say the rail industry really is its own language. I mean, I've been in the industry almost 20 years and I still learn new things almost every day, which makes it super exciting, but also very challenging and kind of intimidating to people who are new to rail. I find that women who are new to the industry often don't know what they don't know, or they're intimidated, or they're scared to admit that they don't know something that people who are established in the industry consider basic or kind of take for granted. Less women come from generations of families who have been in rail, for a very, very long time. So LRW provides resources through our education and our mentorship programs, really to help bridge that gap and to support new women in the industry as they try to learn the basics and onboard.
What are your thoughts on this, Caren?
I agree with what Sarah had said. I believe that there are jobs that are physical and or male dominated, and that is the perception of people on the outside looking in. That may or may not be the case, but I believe many women might not consider railroading as a result of that. I'll say these issues are not isolated to railroads. So what I think we really need to do is to go earlier and talk to students in STEM programs to introduce the students to the industry, the variety of career paths, the fact that you can have an impact in a variety of roles, and it's an exciting and exhilarating career. There are job fairs, there are careers days. I look at myself and I never anticipated that I'd be in my current role. So there are exciting career opportunities. One thing I will say is I have had women that are in engine service and women who have worked in my track department, contrary to the expectations. So education and exposure to the industry are key drivers for success.
Vanessa?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. There's really no reason why women shouldn't be working in the rail industry. As I talked about, I had my two children while I was working on the ground as a switchman. There's no real issues with physicality on the job. There's the majority of work that is done in operations side of the business is really just walking and getting on and off an engine. It's a lot about being able to be confident, being outside, working with others, working with heavy equipment. That's all trained when you're brought to the job. So again, it's really more a question about encouraging women to take the jobs. If we start, especially in the operating side of the business, that's really where you're going to grow the number of women in the industry. I will point out that there are, of all the 250,000 employees at the class ones and short lines and just who work for railroads, only 9% of them are women. And that includes all the back office, it includes all the customer service, it includes all technology and legal, et cetera. So really out in the field, it's more like 2% of all employees out in the field are women. And that really needs to change because, as I say, there's really no reason for it to be a place where you wouldn't want to be. Now, the class ones are very aware of the fact that their systems for keeping employees working can be hard on all employees, both because of extra boards and not having time off. And that can have an impact on say women who have children, but that also affects men who have children. And there are many single women out there. So there really should not be any stigmas for women working in the industry. It's a highly paid job, great benefits, very safe. Safety has improved over the last 20 years incredibly, and really a great place to work.
So in terms of addressing that disparity, what are ways in which you've seen the industry evolve to be more inclusive, or that you have been able to, in your role, in your company, make your workplace more inclusive? Caren, let's start with you.
First, within the industry, I'd say you need to look at the class ones. They are hiring a more diverse group, and you can see some of that in their executives. To the extent where that will continue, time will tell. But more importantly, the class ones are also hiring in transportation, in maintenance of way. You see the fact that there are women and minorities out there. And from time to time, as we have occasion to deal with them, you encounter them, but you know that that's a concerted effort. As for my company, Northwest Arkansas has had a challenging market due to the growth that's taking place here. People are familiar with Walmart bringing their vendors in and having offices, and that has resulted in many people moving to this area. So one can approach the hiring in the typical fashion, but that only goes so far. The job fairs, the schools, the willingness to take a chance on those who might need training. One area that I'd say is unique to us, or not exclusively us, but is our excursion train. We get people who are willing to come and volunteer and work there, and some of them decide that they want to join the railroad. So it provides an introduction. Sometimes it's people who have been established. Sometimes it's students in high school that once they graduate want to come and join us. And that has happened several times. And they are, in addition, a wonderful source of referrals for us.
How about you, Vanessa?
Well, I think it's interesting. The class ones have really made a turn toward having women, certainly women CEOs. We see, I think there's three, if you include a president right now of the class ones who are women. And one of them, the CN, has made a huge effort to really recruit women on the operations side. The Union Pacific has decided publicly that they would double the number of women in their workforce. They have 5.5% women in their company, and they've decided they would double the number by a certain number of years. And they also want to grow the number of people of color in their to 40% by 2030. So I think it comes from the class ones because that's the largest part of the workforce. Short lines will then benefit when class ones really grow the operation side of business. The other thing is, like Caren said, we are in a place where we really can't deny half of the American workforce because really we don't have a lot of choices to just continue to hire only white males. Just because the demographics are changing on this in the United States, and the number of working people has really decreased. So we actually need to focus on growing the women the female part of the workforce.
Sarah?
Yeah, and I'll build on that. I agree. Not only do we need to build on the women workforce, but we need to support them once they're on board as well. I remember about 5 years ago, I was touring a yard with a group from LRW, and we were asking the yard master about, the percentage of women who worked for this particular company in this particular yard. And he told us that every now and then they would have a woman, work there, but then she would usually quit within the year because of scheduling, because of lack of support, et cetera. And which is a real shame. It's a real shame to finally hire women and then have them leave because they don't feel supported. So I will say in recent years, I've seen a lot of growth of employee resource groups at companies, especially the larger companies in the rail sphere. And many of these companies that have employee resource groups have women groups that support women. Many of these groups will partner with the League of Railway Women for events. And so what we're finding is when women feel supported at their own company, and when they also feel like they have a network of support within the broader industry, they stay. And so we're able to keep women in the industry who might otherwise be discouraged and leave.
From what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's work across the board building the infrastructure, the corporate infrastructure for these to be supportive environments. Then we turn our attention to how we draw an audience, how we draw people into developing an interest so that we're getting those applications. Vanessa, how are you involved with bringing more awareness to the freight railroading industry, either on an individual level, your time with BNSF, as well as on a corporate level?
I spend a lot of time at conferences. I'm also a member of the League of Railway Women. I do sort of a number of speaking events to talk about the industry. I don't think I could answer the question of being outside the industry to grow it. So far that is not really where my focus is. So but inside the industry, I spend a lot of time talking about this topic.
Sarah, how about you?
Sure, a couple of ways. So I have a couple of kind of large policy ways and then a couple of kind of more micro personal ways. So I'll start with ASLRRA partners with an organization called Operation Lifesaver. They're a nonprofit leader in rail safety education, helping people learn rail safety, especially around grade crossings and the tracks in general. And we partner with them and promote their mission every year with things such as our Red Out for Rail Safety campaign. We've also provided opportunities at our annual Shortline conference for conference attendees to be trained OLI volunteers so that they can provide rail safety education programs in their community. And I find that the more people learn about rail, whether it's we need to be, if they learn we need to be safe around the tracks, they'll learn more about the industry, and that can also spur interest. Um, I will also share that LRW provides scholarships every year to individuals pursuing a degree that can be used in the rail industry, or individuals who are already in the industry who are furthering their education while working in rail. Um, and then I wanted to kind of flag a really neat event I got to be a part of last year. I facilitated a lunch event at a law school near ASLRRA's General Counsel Symposium. This was the University of Kentucky College of Law, where I brought a panel of our practitioners to speak to law students about their careers and all of the opportunities for lawyers in the rail industry. Something that was completely off my radar when I started, my law school career. And it was very rewarding. And I really hope to be able to do more events like that in the future.
Caren, how about you?
One thing that I do that I would say was unique was I'm on the board for a local transportation group at a university in Arkansas. The opportunity to speak to students at the university and explain to them and educate them about the railroad is an opportunity to create awareness and potential interest. And it's interesting to me the lack of knowledge that there exists about the railroad. Additionally, there are summer camps relating to, in this particular case, young women in STEM programs. They'll visit the railroad, they'll take a train, they'll get a tour of the engine shop. I give them a talk, they take the train. It's an opportunity for them to learn about the railroad. It's an opportunity for me to try to persuade them that this is an opportunity that they should look at in the future. I've offered them the opportunity to come in and perhaps do an internship when they're old enough to do an internship. So that is a way that I am hoping will work out, but it's too soon to tell. Additionally, communities will invite us in for specific events to talk about the railroad. I've talked to local groups and explained what the railroad does. So these are opportunities for us to develop awareness and opportunities to have people understand what the railroad is all about.
The Strasburg Railroad is an institution in the heritage railroad industry, and its mechanical services department is proud to lead the way. With the knowledge and experience that has created one of the most reliable steam railroading experiences in the country, the Strasburg Railroad is excited to offer their expertise to the rest of the industry. Strasburg's professional team provides consulting and technical assistance to take your steam locomotive or rail car project from idea to finished product. They stand behind their work and always strive to meet their customers' needs for quality, historic accuracy, and reliability at a price that is fair. Unlike many competitors, they feature a fully equipped boiler, rail car, and machine shop, so the work gets done in-house, helping you get more for your money. Send your inquiries to mechanical@strasburgrailroad.com and let the professionals get to work for you. Something that I've often think about is tapping into the excitement that already exists among young people who are just beginning their careers. So I'm of the belief that if you have people, men, women, who are already having that excitement because they've grown up with it as kids and they think trains are cool, that's an energy that could be tapped into and harnessed to be able to make the most of that energy, plus the skills that they learn, high school, college, on the job training, to be able to find a fit within the industry. So in terms of closing that employment gap and getting more people into the industry, starting with you, Caren, do you think that it's true that if you are captivating the hearts and minds of boys and girls, that's something that can lead to more people entering the railroad as a career?
Yes, but I would caution that those who have a personal interest in railroading and how a railroad operates from a view from afar is not the case when you work for a railroad. I have one particular employee who believed he knew everything about railroading until he came to work for the railroad. So, having said that, many young people who have a lot of knowledge can be a step ahead of others, and it can help them in their careers. But they need to be judicious in how they use it and not assume that they know more than they actually do. Additionally, one runs the risk that they will take their interest and confuse the relationship between their job and their interest and have overlap where it is not appropriate.
Vanessa, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Caren. I understand what she's saying. I do think trains are cool. I agree with you. And working on trains and fixing track and doing the job. I mean, it's a great job. These are great jobs. And these are jobs that a lot of people would like. They are hard work. They are often outside. They are around dangerous equipment, but trains are cool, and they are something that we would hope young people would be interested in working around. There's a huge sense of accomplishment on a daily basis, building a train and getting it out and moving that train, sending it off to go to its destination. It's pretty exciting to also be the one driving the train to take it to its destination, or supporting those people who do all that work. You know, in every aspect of the rail industry, there are jobs that are exciting and that involve, and the whole railroad itself, the railroad concept is really very interesting. There's always more to learn, as Sarah had brought up.
Sarah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so I agree with both Caren and Vanessa, and we'll also add that, in addition to helping, both girls and boys, both men and women finding interest in and falling in love with the rail industry, also learning that there are so many ranges of jobs that, for all levels of education, right? We have people who are very skilled and very successful with a GED, and then we also have doctors who work for railroads. We have everyone in between. You have just so many ranges of jobs and opportunities on the railroad that you really would be pressed to find, I think, in anywhere else.
I was reading an article from the New York Times recently, and the reporter was talking about a visit that they paid. They were doing reporting on the global supply chain. They were visiting the port of Long Beach and just amazed at the sea of containers and trucks and the amount of activity surrounding this. And I do think that there's a lot to this that is very visceral, and if you get to see it, you get to realize how enormous this is. Colin Maher asks, what is the most rewarding aspect about being involved with the railroad industry? Let's start with you, Vanessa.
Well, yeah, that was my territory for 14 years, really, the ports of Long Beach and Los Angeles. And I can't tell you how exciting it was to be on the cutting edge of a growing industry and to see how much that whole area grew in just a few years. We went from running one train a day down to the one terminal called Maersk. And over a 4 or 5 month period, we were running 7 trains in and 7 trains out. And now there are 13 rail served terminals down in the Port of Long Beach and Los Angeles. And just massive influx in container shipping. The excitement around that, about doing that kind of work, though, is that you really feel a sense of accomplishment, that you're part of essentially the American economy, right? The railroad industry is the base of the American economy. All of the inputs, now the intermodal are actually retail products, but most of the inputs that you need for industry, plastics and coal and energy and oils and chemicals are shipped by rail. And to be a part of that is an exciting thing. And it's really, you feel like you're part of a very important campaign.
Sarah?
Yeah, for me, it's honestly the same thing that excited me about accepting my job offer from FRA all those years ago, being part of the greater good. When we can move goods and people safely, efficiently, and economically across our country, everyone benefits. And the United States is massive, and it's just amazing that freight rail keeps goods and our economy moving. It's really just such a privilege to be a part of it.
Caren?
I agree with Vanessa, but I have a somewhat different perspective. Running a small railroad in a growing corner of Arkansas creates opportunities and challenges. And I would say that by and large, this is the most exciting and exhilarating thing I have ever done for my career and just as a general lifetime accomplishment. To watch train roll past my office does give me a sense of accomplishment, but it's represents so much more than that. It entails work with communities. It's the changes you affect. It's the work with individual companies to be able to watch them grow and succeed and go into different markets. We are, in fact, an engine of growth for Northwest Arkansas, and that gives me a sense of great accomplishment. We carry goods for the infrastructure. We carried lots of sand. We carry lumber. We carry metals that are used in construction. So we're playing an integral role that not everyone understands or sees. And then there's the development of employees. To watch them come along, to nurture them, is a great source of accomplishment and pride. So in summary, Northwest Arkansas and what we do feeds into the national economy, and likewise the national economy feeds into us. It's rewarding, and I'm happy that I can do this.
Yeah, I want to explore the topic of short line railroading a bit more because I find that when I talk to the general public, their knowledge of freight railroading is largely based on the class ones. Whatever knowledge they have, whatever articles they've seen, chances are it's about the class ones, good, bad, or otherwise. As somebody who does filmmaking for a number of freight short line clients, I've come to really learn so much about the short line industry, and I think it's such a wonderful piece of the supply chain narrative that is often overlooked by people unfamiliar with the industry. Sarah, starting with you, what to you are the strengths of the short line freight railroad industry?
Oh my goodness, I could talk about that for the next hour. So many things. So first, I'll say we have over 600 short line railroads in the United States. And if you know one short line, you know one short line because they are just all so different and so unique. And we have ones that are very large companies that operate very similar to class ones in terms of their scope and their reach. And then we have others that have a handful of operational employees that are truly very, very small businesses. But overall, the small town and rural economies where short lines operate grow, and they ensure that jobs and businesses stay local. And short lines are railroads, of course, but many of them think of themselves more as customer advocates or rail concierges for shippers. And they overall bring, goods that first mile or that last mile to the U.S. freight network, help connecting places that would otherwise be cut off from transportation.
Caren, as the president of a short line, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts on this.
I agree with Sarah. We have many opportunities and challenges, and in my opinion, even a sense of obligation. We have a commitment to the businesses. employees in the communities, as I said. We work to help develop the region. I probably have a somewhat different perspective than most. I believe in reinvestment in the railroad. And I look at the railroad as a long-term extension for my family. So I have acquired over 100 sand cars in the past few years to be able to move the sand. I have acquired 3 new SD70 6-axle ACEs. I've acquired land for expansion. Of course, we maintain the track and the bridges. But for those who may not be aware, we have a multi-million-dollar project to upgrade our lift span bridge across the Arkansas River. I am trying to position the railroad for the future. So the ability that a short line railroad can do that, and as long as we have the funds to be able to do that, it's easy to make decisions. We can make decisions quickly. But again, we have to partner with our local communities, workers, and businesses. And the ability to do all of those is a significant strength. And following up on that, one of the things is when industries are looking to locate on a rail line, the A&M has connections with 3 Class 1s. That can be important for a variety of reasons. Typically, there's 2 in particular. One is the service that we can provide. And second, there's competition between the Class 1s for their business, so they have the opportunity to impact the cost of shipping. It's an important decision for the companies.
Vanessa, what do you think?
Yeah, so shorelines are very important to the Class 1 network. 20% of all carloads are originate or are destined to short lines. So that's where the Class 1s really receive a lot of their customer base. And short lines have always been incredibly responsive to their local customers. So they are able to provide service that often the Class 1s aren't able to provide. So they can, they can call up their local short line and say, hey, the customer can, and say, hey, I really need this car spotted at this time. Could you do it? And short lines will almost always answer yes and get that done for them. That's a really different type of relationship than they would with their long haul carrier. Sometimes the short line can provide 2 Class 1 connections, which is nice for a shipper. So we've seen a number of shippers locating on short lines, large customers making decisions to pick short lines, either for their location, very, very specific, location that really matters, or maybe they have the access to competitive Class 1s. So yeah, short lines are an exciting place, and that, as Sarah said, there's so many of them, and they are, like Caren mentioned, they often change hands when it comes to holding companies, but they're still the same number has really been around for a long time. We've got some that are new short lines. I will say that Cathcart Rail has established a new short line in Nebraska, and it's called the Cornhusker, and we just received a $15 million CRISI grant for that work, so we can start building it out and add new customers. So it's a place to also bring new business to the railroad industry.
And following up on that, one of the things is that, yes, when we have industries looking to locate, it's very important to them. They'll say, well, the A&M has connections with 3 Class 1s. And so it's important to them, well, I don't want to be on here. I want the opportunity to have the competition between the Class 1s. So yes, that becomes an important factor in, industry decisions.
It does. And I'm so glad that you mentioned CRISI, Vanessa, because I, over the past few years, have come to learn so much about it. And I feel that probably a lot of folks who are joining us today probably don't know as much about it. Sarah, perhaps you can introduce us to what CRISI is and why it's really revitalizing railroading, especially in the short line sector.
So in 2015, Congress recognized the outstanding rebuilding needs of the short line industry and acted, creating the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Improvements Program. Congress made Class 2 and Class 3 short line railroads directly eligible to be recipients of competitive funds. And since the first CRISI grants were awarded beginning in 2017, short lines have used CRISI program resources to replace track and cross ties, add and extend sidings, rehabilitate bridges, improve drainage and roadbeds, replace rail and upgrade and replace motive power, among many other investments. And an important achievement of many of these projects has been to enable these lines to handle the industry standard 286,000 pound rail cars, ensuring national network interoperability. So with the federal grant support, short lines have revitalized significant sections of the rail network, which allows for greater volume of service, reduces bottlenecks, and also congestion, as well as harnessing the significant environmental benefits of moving freight by rail.
Thank you for providing that overview, Sarah. It really is a tremendous benefit to the industry. I've had the privilege of working as a contractor for a number of short lines and getting to document these projects. And it is so fascinating to see these being undertaken, especially some of them, the before and afters can be quite dramatic in terms of what they're able to do and upgrading their infrastructure. So it's so great to have that. Looking at your careers and starting with you, Caren, on a day-to-day basis, what do you enjoy most about your job?
Every day is different. And sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes a bad thing. But I do like the ability to make changes. I pride myself on being flexible. If I want to put in a new track, I can make that decision quickly. It may not come to fruition quickly if we don't have the material or we don't have the labor to get it done. But what we have talked about earlier is we impact the communities, the population, the environment, the industries, and hopefully all for the better. Those are the things that I like. Those are the things that excite me.
Those are good things. How about you, Vanessa?
Well, I really love the people I work with. I have an exciting team of folks from, my executive team all the way through to the operating folks. I think our company's very wonderful place to be. And I do really enjoy working with our customers. As I say, most of my customers are short line railroads, and they are just wonderful people. I always learn from them, and I love going to railroads. I'm a little like you, Nick. I spend a lot of time at railroads looking, learning about how they're designed and who, where the cars are coming from and what they're going, where they're going and what customers they're going to. And so to me, it's just a hugely interesting industry, but that sense of accomplishment that I talked about before, I think is really the key. I really like the idea of getting things done every day and knowing that we are making our host railroads safe when we repair cars and developing our team's careers and building a company.
All of that is very good. How about you, Sarah?
So similar for me, the most rewarding aspect of my job is it's never the same. It's never the same day twice. I am never bored. Rail is so big, and my role within ASLRRA encompasses so much that I'll be, reviewing a contract one day. I'll be handling litigation the next day. I'll be dealing with an employee issue the next day. I'll be, then handling something to do with federal compliance the day after that. I love the challenge and the fulfillment, knowing that I'm part of the greater good of freight railroading. And then just as kind of icing on the cake, I also get to do my work with the League of Railway Women, where I get to talk about, connecting and cultivating women in rail.
My last question to each of you today is, as you look to the future of the industry, what excites you the most? Let's start with you, Caren.
It's just the opportunity to grow and affect changes. I'm trying to create a railroad for generations, so I don't look to make changes exclusively for the short term, even though those are necessary to operate the company. I look for longevity to the extent that it's possible. It involves people, communities, connections with Class 1s, and what we can do to make improvements. That's my main story, but there are a couple of different segments. I have an excursion train, and that's an important segment for us for a couple of different reasons. One, in some cases, that's the only thing that the surrounding communities are aware that we do. They don't necessarily know that we haul freight. But we also help develop tourism. So we need to work with the cities, and we do work together and partner with them to bring people in. Sometimes it's individuals, sometimes it's tour groups, and there are a lot of tour groups, particularly in the latter part of the year. So that's just a snippet of the things that are out there, but it entails working with a lot of stakeholders to accomplish the goals for the common good. And in conclusion, I could not do that without the team that I have.
How about you, Sarah?
So yeah, I would say something similar. What I find most exciting is that we're continuing to build an even safer, even more efficient freight rail network for the country, and enabling investment, especially on for the short line segment, helps make that possible. And it's a very exciting time, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we are, 50 years from now.
And Vanessa?
Well, so for Cathcart Rail, we are looking to the future of growth for sure. We expect that especially the division that I work for in the field services division, it's going to double in size. So we've got about 250 employees now. We expect that we'll have another 500 or a total of 500, in 5 to 10 years. And we do think that this is a growing part of the business, and we would like to continue to do it. So I'm excited about the future for our company.
It's great to hear each of your perspectives on this subject and your experiences with the industry, past, present, and looking towards the future. Caren, Vanessa, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us here on the Roundhouse to have this conversation with us.
And now, the question of the day.
Last time on the Roundhouse, we were talking to Curtis Koch of Broadway Limited Imports, a model railroad manufacturer, which led to the question of what is your favorite model or some of your favorite model trains that have ever been produced. On Facebook, Ted Merrill writes, Godshall H10. I had to look this one up. It's a quite large scale Pennsylvania Railroad H10, quite a beautiful model. And Brandon Smith writes, for me, I may be just slightly biased because I volunteer for the real one, but it would have to be Broadway Limited's Milwaukee Road S3 Class 261 and Walters Hiawatha train set to go with it. I feel we are in the heyday of model railroading as a whole, and it will only get more advanced as time goes on. I agree, Brandon. I think that there's a lot of tremendously well-detailed models, and it is really encouraging people to select different eras, and I think that is a wonderful benefit. Your question of the day for this episode is, for railroad employees, what do you find rewarding about working in the railroad industry? Let me know on the roundhousepodcast.com. Links to social media are there. Again, if you want to support the podcast and get early access to episodes, go to patreon.com/theroundhouse. Thank you guys for listening. And remember, as always, that the Roundhouse is our house.